12. U.S. states black people should think twice before moving to. The truth no one dares to say. You could be denied the right to vote for missing a single piece of paper, sentenced to 12 years in prison just for holding a phone, or rejected from a job 3 times, even though you did everything right. This isn't the past, this is America, right now. Here are the 12 U.S. states black people should think twice before moving to. The truth no one dares to say. If you're a person of color considering relocating to the United States, this is the video you must watch. If you had to choose one state from this list, which one would it be? Mississippi. Can you imagine a place where your community makes up nearly 40% of the population, yet still struggles with feeling sidelined in the very land you call home? That's Mississippi. A state rich in history but also burdened with challenges that make many black residents feel alienated in their pursuit of a better life. Mississippi isn't just a vital part of American history. It's also where major civil rights milestones were forged. But today, the state still faces major disparities in social development, especially for black communities. From job opportunities to school quality to healthcare systems, the picture reveals serious room for improvement. According to the Kids Count Data Center, Mississippi consistently ranks at the bottom in metrics related to child education and health. These aren't just dry statistics, they represent the real lives of thousands of families. Imagine your child in an under-resourced classroom, public clinics that can't keep up, and job prospects that feel out of reach. Is that really a strong foundation to build a future on? One sobering story is that of Willie Nash, a man from Jackson, Mississippi, who was sentenced to 12 years in prison simply for using a cell phone in jail. A phone correctional staff accidentally allowed him to bring in. Willie's case shocked many, not just for its harsh sentence, but because it exposed a justice system lacking compassion and balance, especially when it comes to people of color. They call it freedom. But is it really? What if that happened to your loved one? Alabama. Can you believe that in the 21st century, voting, a basic civil right, is still not equally accessible to everyone? For many black residents of Alabama, this isn't just a feeling. It's an ongoing reality. Alabama is a state rich in Southern history and culture, but it's also a place where long-standing barriers still hinder black communities from accessing basic rights. Take voting, for example. Many residents must navigate strict ID requirements that disproportionately affect low-income or formerly incarcerated individuals, the majority of whom are people of color. The story of Miss Laverne, a 70-something woman from Selma, the site of historic civil rights marches, moved many. Despite having fought for voting rights in her youth, she was forced to return home in frustration after being denied the right to vote over a missing piece of new documentation. Over-policing in predominantly black neighborhoods also creates an atmosphere of discomfort in communities that should feel like home. On top of that, public health and education systems in many areas are deteriorating, undermining long-term development for future generations. Alabama may be home to many, but it's also a place calling out for transformation, toward fairness and inclusion. If you've ever lived here, witnessed, or experienced something powerful, share your story so others can better understand. Perhaps your voice could spark the positive change we need tomorrow. If you've lived somewhere where basic rights, like voting, access to quality health care, or simply feeling safe, weren't guaranteed, how did that feel? Would you be willing to share your story so others can learn and empathize? Louisiana. Did you know that even in a place often considered the cradle of black culture, like Louisiana, the feeling of being marginalized remains all too familiar for many? High incarceration rates, stark income gaps, and the lasting toll of natural disasters make life here far from easy. despite its vibrant exterior. Take the story of Jamal, a young black man living in Baton Rouge. With a college degree and a clean record, he was still rejected 3 times for the same job that his white classmate was hired for on the first try. "I wasn't sad about being turned down," Jamal said. "I was sad because I felt invisible in my own hometown." Louisiana is a land of festivals, vibrant jazz rhythms, and rich culture, especially in New Orleans, where black history is woven into every street. Yet beneath the shine lies a long-standing shadow of inequality passed down through generations. According to data from the Prison Policy Initiative, Louisiana has one of the highest black incarceration rates in the U.S. This highlights not just challenges within the justice system, but also reflects how hard it is for people of color to access fairness and stability. Even in places like New Orleans, where the black community is the majority, the sense of being unheard still lingers, especially on issues involving policing or social services. Economically, the hurdles are just as real. Income gaps between communities remain stark. Many young people, even with talent and determination, struggle to find stable jobs, particularly outside major urban areas. On top of that, frequent hurricanes and weak infrastructure leave many black communities more vulnerable during natural disasters. Arkansas. Arkansas is a state blessed with wild natural beauty and a slow-paced southern lifestyle. But behind that tranquility are more complex stories, especially for communities of color. One historical marker stands out: the Little Rock 9 incident in 1957, when 9 black students faced fierce resistance simply for trying to attend a white high school. Though decades have passed, echoes of that era still linger in how some communities handle difference today. Many newcomers say they feel like outsiders in their own neighborhoods, not because anyone says anything directly, but because of the stares and invisible distance in everyday interactions. This is especially noticeable in smaller towns, where it's hard to find shops, salons, or community spaces that reflect black culture and needs. Arkansas also faces serious economic challenges. The median income for black households is still notably lower than the state average. Quality job opportunities, particularly in specialized or managerial roles, remain limited. This greatly affects one's ability to build a stable and long-term future. Arkansas may be ideal for some, but it's also a place that needs more effort to become open and inclusive. If you've ever lived here or have personal experiences, share them with the community. Your story might help others make better decisions for their own journey. If you're still watching at this point, you're someone who cares about the truth, and the world needs more people like you. South Carolina. South Carolina, where coastal beauty meets deep-rooted history, is also a place where symbols of the past still stir debate. While some call it heritage, many black residents see it as a wound that hasn't healed. The continued presence of Confederate flags on public buildings or monuments glorifying the war era makes many feel that true inclusion hasn't yet been achieved. In rural areas or small towns, the phrase heritage, not hate, is often used to justify keeping these symbols. But for those who grew up without equal access to education, housing, or jobs, these symbols revive memories of inequality that still persist. Many regions suffer from low investment in public education, especially in predominantly black neighborhoods. Job assistance programs are uneven, making it harder for young people to find long-term paths. At the same time, the lack of diversity in growing industries slows the building of a multicultural community. South Carolina isn't exactly unlivable, but it is a place that demands greater listening and improvement. If you've lived here, seen, or experienced something real, share it. Your insight could help someone else gain a better perspective before deciding where to settle or seek opportunity. West Virginia. West Virginia is a state known for its majestic natural beauty and peaceful pace of life, But for black individuals or other minority groups, it holds hidden social barriers that can't be overlooked. With people of color making up only about 3–4% of the population, the lack of racial diversity not only creates a sense of isolation, but also makes it harder to build community or establish cultural connections. The state's economy is also facing serious challenges. Unemployment rates are higher than the national average, median incomes are low, and a steady population decline over the past decade signals a shrinking job market. That means limited career opportunities, especially for newcomers. In addition, while many areas across the U.S. have made progress toward building a more equitable and inclusive society, some communities in West Virginia still hold on to long-standing prejudices. These aren't always overt, but they can affect a person's sense of safety, belonging, and overall quality of life as a minority. Of course, everyone's journey is different, and for some, West Virginia offers a rare sense of peace. But if you're considering moving here, especially as a black person, it's important to research the local community, living conditions, and support resources available. Have you ever lived in or visited areas as lacking in diversity as West Virginia? What was your experience like? Share it in the comments so we can all learn from one another. Kentucky. Moving to a new place isn't just about changing your address, it's about choosing safety, acceptance, and the chance to fully be yourself. For black people in America, those things aren't always guaranteed. Kentucky is a clear example, a state with a complex history where questions about justice, opportunity, and fairness continue to surface daily. Remember the story of Breonna Taylor, a young black healthcare worker who was shot and killed in her own apartment in Louisville in 2020. She wasn't armed, hadn't committed a crime, yet still became the victim of a nighttime police raid. Her death didn't just shake America, it awakened a deep fear among many black people. Am I really safe in the place I live? While people may interpret the incident differently, it reignited a nationwide conversation about fairness in the justice system, especially when it involves people of color. It doesn't stop there. According to reports from the ACLU, black individuals in Kentucky are significantly more likely to be pulled over and searched by police, even without any clear signs of wrongdoing. This makes many people uneasy about law enforcement interactions, a key factor when considering quality of life. Additionally, predominantly black areas in Kentucky often struggle with underfunded schools, leading to unequal education. Young black individuals face limited job opportunities, and economic mobility is frequently blocked by invisible barriers. Wyoming. Wyoming is one of the least densely populated states in the U.S., and also one of the least racially diverse. According to U.S. Census data, black people make up only about 1% of the state's entire population. The near absence of communities of color means it's extremely difficult to find suitable social, cultural, or religious support networks, all of which are vital when trying to build a stable life in a new place. On top of that, the conservative atmosphere and limited cultural exchange can create a sort of reverse culture shock for those coming from diverse cities like Atlanta, Chicago, or New York. While schools and public services may be structurally sound, they often lack inclusion of multicultural values in curricula and programs. Of course, for some people, Wyoming is the perfect place to escape the noise, enjoy peace, and stay close to nature. But if you're black, or part of any minority group, you should thoroughly research the specific area and try to connect with local communities, if any, in advance to avoid feelings of isolation. Missouri. When a community feels like it constantly has to prove its worth just to be treated fairly, it's no longer a personal issue. It's a systemic one. For many black Americans, Missouri is one of those places where their very existence can still feel suspicious. The Ferguson incident in 2014 wasn't just a tragedy. It was a wake-up call about the broken trust between citizens and those sworn to protect them. Michael Brown, an 18-year-old black teenager, was shot and killed by police on a Ferguson street. The incident sparked protests across the U.S., not only because of his tragic death, but also because of how the system responded. Slowly, without transparency, and in a way that deeply hurt the community's trust. Since then, Ferguson has become a symbol of fractured relationships between law enforcement and people of color in Missouri. Missouri, especially the St. Louis area, still struggles with several issues: high crime rates, clear social divides, and an economic and educational gap between racial groups that remains unclosed. Black residents often feel the unequal quality of public services, from schools to healthcare to job opportunities. It's true that some areas of Missouri are working toward change through community initiatives and efforts to improve police-citizen dialogue. Still, for Black individuals considering moving here, evaluating the local environment is essential. Have you ever visited Missouri? What was your first impression of the people and the living conditions there? North Dakota. Not everyone who moves to a new place finds a warm welcome. Especially for Black people, a home isn't just a place to live. It's a space to feel safe, respected, and connected to a community. And in North Dakota, where winters are so harsh that people can go weeks without stepping outside, that sense of belonging can feel more fragile than ever. A friend who once worked a contract job in Fargo said that while no one was openly hostile, the frequent stares, awkward questions like, "Where are you from?" or "You're probably not used to this place, huh?" were enough to make them feel like an outsider. Not hateful, but not welcoming either. That's the general feeling many people of color report in the small towns of this state. According to the latest U.S. Census Bureau data, Black residents make up less than 3% of North Dakota's population. With such a small community, it's hard to find cultural, social, or even basic support networks, like restaurants, barbershops, or churches that serve the Black community. On top of that, job opportunities outside of oil and extraction industries are relatively limited, especially for those wanting to start a business or work in fields like media, education, or the arts. The severe environment, with long winters, heavy snow, and extreme cold, also presents major challenges for those coming from warmer regions. Building community becomes harder when people avoid going outside for months at a time. Idaho. Idaho is one of the whitest states in the U.S., with over 90% of the population identifying as white. The lack of racial diversity isn't just a statistic, it's a real challenge for those seeking empathy and cultural connection. Even more concerning is that northern Idaho was once the base of Aryan Nations, a white supremacist extremist group. While the organization disbanded in the early 2000s, the legacy it left still lingers in the way people of color experience safety and perception here. A friend once told me that after living in Boise, the state capital, for a few months, what wore them down wasn't the cold, but the sense of invisibility, rarely seeing anyone who looked like them, lacking shared cultural spaces, and almost never encountering businesses owned by people of color. That absence, they said, was a kind of silence that slowly made them retreat inward. Additionally, Idaho's political climate leans conservative, with social attitudes less open than neighboring states like California or Oregon. This can manifest in policies on immigration, minority support programs, and even day-to-day social interactions. Montana. Montana has an extremely low Black population, making up only about 0.5%. According to U.S. Census Bureau data. This results in a lack of services, community support, or cultural resources tailored for people of color. Civil rights organizations also operate on a limited scale, mostly centered in a few major cities like Billings or Missoula. In addition, Montana has a fairly conservative political climate, and some areas still maintain a closed-off lifestyle, with little openness toward outsiders. While crime rates are low, that doesn't necessarily mean emotional safety. especially if you're a minority in an unfamiliar environment, both racially and culturally. Although Montana rarely makes national headlines for major racial incidents, many Black residents have shared stories of individual small-scale harassment. Quiet but persistent, especially in smaller towns where minority presence is virtually non-existent. These might include subtle mockery, suspicious stares when entering local diners, or repeated harmless questions like, "What are you doing here?" asked with skepticism. Some former residents also reported being followed while shopping, or clearly being treated less warmly than other customers. These experiences rarely make the news, but leave lasting psychological effects because they don't come from a clear system, but seep into everyday life, making people feel spiritually isolated, even in the middle of a crowd. This is the kind of challenge that's hard to quantify but deeply felt through each small interaction. For those who've never lived in an environment where they're always the different one, it might be hard to grasp just how much that feeling can impact mental health and quality of life. Every place has its light and its shadows, but for Black Americans, the difference isn't always about choice. It's about feeling. Do I really get to live, to breathe, and to be myself? 12 U.S. states Black people should think twice before moving to the truth no one dares to say is not meant to judge, but to help you see clearly before making a decision. Have you ever lived in any of these places? What was your experience like? Share it in the comments. Your story might help someone else avoid a wrong move. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to hit like, share it with your loved ones, and subscribe to the channel to explore more untold stories and real-life perspectives. This video is for informational and educational purposes only, and does not represent any political stance or organization. Let's approach everything with open minds and thoughtful awareness.